originating from the podcast studio inside FAM 360's headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. The Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast is designed to encourage, equip, and inspire our audience through a combination of inspirational stories and real-life experiences shared by other successful and skilled leaders in a variety of vocations. We hope that the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast empowers each one of us to step out, step up, and ultimately thrive as leaders. Now here's our host, Mr. Matt Maloney.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Matt Maloney. I just wanted to start off today by saying how grateful I am of our member audience, all of our listeners out there. Grateful that God has placed me in this opportunity, in this position, and have this opportunity to be able to just kind of speak and share the wisdom from guests that we have on this podcast. And again, I would encourage all of us to kind of have a heart of gratitude. It's something that's resonating with me right now in my home and in my family, just itemizing all the things that we're grateful for. And I'll tell you, it's actually made for a better outlook for me during the holiday season, which sometimes can be a little stressful. So I am intrigued is the word that comes to mind. I'm intrigued about today's guest. Today's guest is a health and wellness coach at Beauty for Broken Wellness. She is passionate about a number of things, but specifically passionate about emotional intelligence, leadership, focusing on leading oneself in order really to lead, others, or before leading others, but also in order to lead others. She works with individuals who are working to obtain and sustain healthy lifestyle rhythms for optimum physical wellness, as well as emotional and spiritual balance in life. And I think that that's really, really rich, that whole balance thing in life, right? But it's about having these rhythms, and we're going to learn a lot about that today. I've talked about that on other podcasts, and I'm really excited for her to share her wisdom with our audience and with me. It's one of the greatest things I get, because I get to have guests like you on our podcast to learn myself, that I can use these teachings to be able to use in my own life. So I'd like to, before I introduce our guest, I'd like to kind of lead off with this quote. When we are foolish, we want to conquer the world. When we are wise, we want to conquer ourselves. And that's a quote from John Maxwell. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Miss Julie Miles.
Thank you so much. So happy and honored to be here with you, Matt.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is good. A little background for the audience. I met Julie through some family relationships, and Julie actually was working with my wife and I in our family and doing some life coaching and some things that we need to actually pick back up on at some points. But we're gonna learn a lot about that today from Julie's perspective, and some of the rich wisdom that she has, that she shares with people that she coaches. But before we get into all of that, just talk a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am a life and wellness coach, ICF certified, and actually working towards my board certification to be a wellness coach.
Wow.
Most recently, I'm working with some practitioners in functional medicine to help bring in that wellness piece with the emotional and lifestyle piece, because they all work together.
Yeah.
So, but I coach, I consider myself a rhythms coach.
Yeah.
Because
that's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, because really that's what life is finding that balance with the rhythms of our life. And a lot of times we hone in on one area of our life. Yeah. But really we need to find balance in the rhythms of, like you said earlier, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual rhythms. And find some, what I call sustainable transformation. We can do anything for 30 days, but what I love to help people do is champion them for change where there are gaps in those rhythms, to fill in those gaps and find rhythms within that to sustain their life. And
I love that idea about sustainable transformation, and just what it takes to transform our lives. And it's not this big event. It's this sustained, persistent, consistent. And a lot of people talk about how life is, not a sprint. It's a marathon, right? I look at it more of, it's like a journey, right? And on journeys, we have to sustain ourselves. And there's times on journeys, there's times of rest, there's times of weakness, there's times of strength. And I love that, how you said that sustainable transformation. So what well, first of all, this whole concept of a life coach, it's really interesting to me. Tell us a little bit about that. What led you to become a life coach? Was there a calling? Was there something in your life that happened that triggered you to say, ooh, this is what I want to do. This is what God's calling me to do. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say the transition from into life coaching. It is a fairly new field. And my background is actually in counseling. And what I think has happened is there's a trend as well where not everybody needs a counselor. Counselor sort of takes one back and looks at what the past maybe, where your past is affecting your future,
right,
or your present state. Whereas a life coach is a moving forward. You're looking at where you are and going where you want to be. And so transitioning, we moved to the Atlanta area about 12 years ago. And I was a stay-at-home mom at that time with a background in counseling, and I just felt that stirring in my heart to continue what God had always called me to do. I felt like to be an encourager and a champion for people, to help them be better.
Now, what kind of counseling, just real quick, so what kind of counseling were you doing? Was it family counseling?
Well, I was a social worker, and I worked with the state and did some addiction counseling, some family crisis intervention, mental health counseling, sort of a variety of those things. Ran the gamut in that realm. And then had a family and decided that we were blessed to be able to have me home with the kids. So, but when we moved here, the Lord just began stirring the coaching. And I said, what is this life coaching thing? Let me explore that a little further. And it just resonated with what I feel called to do, is to help people move forward in success and sustain transformation. So
that's good. So when I and I think you said what I thought, where intuitively I felt like counseling is helping, unpack a lot of the things in the past and work and helping people walk through their certain specific current situation, right? While life coaching, I feel like does that, but it helps us peer into where we want to go, right? And who we ultimately want to be in our family, perhaps in our business, whatever it might be. But that was my intuition, but that's good that you said that. And so what are some crucial concepts that you believe are necessary? You've counseled probably a number of, maybe hundreds, I don't know, of people, maybe thousands. You're a life coach for dozens, maybe hundreds of people or families. What do you feel are kind of some of the crucial concepts, just high level, just so the audience kind of gets a little flavor of this, that are necessary for a successful person? And I know you talk about working on oneself first, and maybe you can just start by explaining what you mean by that, by working on oneself, and maybe that's a derivative of the rest of it.
When I have a client first come to me, we do a consultation, and we work through where they feel like their gaps are, and we look at an assessment I call it a life assessment, life wheel assessment. And we look at 8 areas of life, including career, family, spiritual, physical, and they kind of rate themselves. And we look at, that sort of gives us a picture of, where the gaps are, and where we need to hone in. And I also do a core values assessment, and a temperament assessment, because these things, it's important for us to know ourselves. When we know ourselves, we know how we are wired, how we operate, whether it be in leadership or just in relationship and conflict resolution, and how we're going to discipline ourselves, where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are. So it's so important, I think, to begin as we mean to go with each of my clients, individualize their plan and establish vision. I think without vision, people perish, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's...
You don't know where you're going.
Right.
Without vision, you have no compass for life. You got to have a vision for your own life.
You have to have a map. And so those are some kind of key components of how we start. And I always tell my clients, we begin as we mean to go. So wherever you want to go, let's begin that way. And, one step, every step is a step.
That's good. So maybe let's unpack that. Let's peel that back a little bit. So, with your life coaching, do you find yourself with individuals more, or do you find yourself with a family where you're working on each of the individuals? And maybe just give the audience a little bit of taste of that. So let's say you could first answer that question, but then the second question is, if it is a family, how do you work inside? How do you work in this life coaching inside the family with, husband and wife, if there is a spouse, and then certainly the children, because there's children throw a whole nother dynamic in this, right?
Right. Absolutely. Well, I work with both individuals and groups.
Okay.
I do a lot of group coaching for, soul care, detox, physical detox. I kind of do several of those a year, and that creates community and encouragement for one another, accountability, all those things. And those are some of the benefits of coaching as well. You've got that built-in partnership, accountability, just that camaraderie, a champion for you.
I love that.
And individually, same thing, same dynamic, except it's just a one-on-one, more intimate setting. With the family, I love family coaching, because you do start with the foundations of, and it all boils down to identity, just as I talked about before. Whether I'm working with an individual or a group, it's how is your identity impacting your decisions? Because every decision leads to a destination, right?
Sure.
And so your identity is so critical in that. So when you're looking at a family, you look at, what is this family's identity? Where do they want to go as a family? And mom and dad have to, the marriage or the partnership has to precede anything that happens with each of the family members.
Yeah. I'm curious to get your opinion on this, but I have found that in many conversations that I've had, personal conversations that I've had with colleagues, CEOs of other companies and whatnot, one of the things in men's groups that I'm in, where we're sharing, we're sharing just challenges that we're having. One of the common threads that I hear often is that, I feel like I'm really able to connect and do well in my business and with my peers at work, and I'm struggling to manifest that same success at home. Why is that? Why do you think that is? You talk a little bit about rhythms, and I don't know, maybe there's just a break in the rhythm there. From your experience, why do you think that that's the case oftentimes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, we all know that the people that we love the most, we become the most vulnerable. And I think we let our guard down. And some of that, I like to talk about default versus design. And unfortunately, we're wired to want to have the approval of other people, look our best and give our excellent self,
sure,
so people can see that. Where at home, we can let our guard down, and sometimes we let it down a little too much. And we're able to say, I just don't have the energy here.
Sometimes we're just exhausted from tired. Trying so hard elsewhere.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, I coach myself. One of the things that resonates with me is with anybody, that I want them to feel present with Christ and feel heard and understood when they leave being with me. But when I'm with my family, sometimes that's not always the case, right?
Right.
So we become more vulnerable and let our guard down. And where I think we need to just shift that priority, shift that rhythm. And it's a purposeful intention. That's part of what coaching is living with intention. And so you have to do that.
So true. We have to, and it takes some effort, right? It takes more. In fact, it takes, I think, more effort, I believe, to be intentional in those rhythms inside the home than it is, because it's maybe a little more unnatural to have some of these productive and maybe grateful rhythms inside the home versus outside. I can speak from personal experience. My business life is a very rhythm driven, and I don't necessarily mean scheduled. There's a scheduled piece of it, but it's very rhythm driven. We kind of know what we're doing. And I personally thrive in having that rhythm. I feel good, meaning when I say I thrive. But at home, it's a little it can be disconnected. Yeah. And part of it is seasonal aspects of life. With children, I've got a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old boy, 2 girls and a boy. And so just by virtue of running around with all their stuff, there's the rhythm is tough. But then throw in the other life things. So it's interesting. You talked about earlier, you start it starts with the individual, right? The man or woman in the mirror, right? And doing this assessment. So you talked about a life wheel, and then core values, and then kind of temperament. So the life wheel, I don't want to go over that too quickly. I want to go back. So the life wheel has 6 or 8 different
components,
components to it. And that's the individual, right? So that individual focuses on those 8 components. So unpack that a little bit. Or is the individual listing out what they want for those 8 components? What does that look like?
They're sort of rating themselves from 1 to 10, like how satisfied they are with. There's probably 4 or 5 components under each category where they're looking at daily rhythms.
Yes.
How satisfied are they with how their daily rhythms are in that area?
Got it.
And when there's a 2 in one area and an 8 in the other, I call it what's bleeding.
Yeah. We
triage that at 2 and say, okay, well, why is that? Where's the gap? And we try to self-govern the gap.
Yeah.
Self-governing, self-discipline, those things that you were just talking about with family, you've got to figure out, what do I need to do to establish that rhythm?
That's great. What do healthy daily, because you talked about rhythms, what do healthy daily rhythms look like, I guess, physically, from your perspective, physically, emotionally, spiritually? And I guess maybe it's not exactly the same for everybody, but certainly there's a sphere there that's fairly consistent. So what does that look like for those 3 things?
It is very individualized because we all have different stressors. But I have clients who will come and they're in the best physical shape of their life, but their labs are off. They're not healthy. And part of that is the component of stress, either at home in their marriage, whether it's stressful work environment, and that impacts the other rhythms being off as well. So if your physical rhythms, that's going to depend on what you enjoy doing physically. Where are you spending your time? What people say, oh, I need to get fit, I need to exercise. Well, there's not a one size fits all for everyone.
Yeah.
So even physically, you have to look at the individual and what is a type of exercise that's going to bring enjoyment to you. What do you enjoy doing? And then, of course, looking at your time schedule physically. Where are you spending your time? And are you allowing yourself some of those Sabbath moments during the day? That is something that people say, how do you feel like people can be more efficient? Take a 30-minute Sabbath every day.
Oh yeah.
Re-energize, refuel, because that feeds the emotional wellness, right?
Yeah.
That's a physical thing you can do with your time, and you can be proactive about putting that on your calendar. Then it feeds your emotional rhythm of rest and re-energizing for whatever comes the rest of your day. And then spiritually, that might come into play when you're emotionally resting. You might pray or meditate or just breathe.
Yeah.
People underestimate the beauty of breathing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, the breathing rhythms too help balance out things in your brain. And my wife and I have been listening to another podcast that from a brain doctor, and it's been fascinating, some of the things that we've learned from this podcast. But he was talking about just how some of the breathing rhythms and what they do within dopamine and serotonin levels in the brain and how it just resets. But I think I want the audience to kind of hear this again, because I think this is so important. And I think that if we look back 50 years ago, there were these natural intraday resting periods and Sabbaths and things that were going on. And in fact, even today in other countries, that's more normal than what it is right here in the United States. And the United States, we're such a consumer-based economy at this point in time, but everything is in real time and right at our fingertips, and these dopamine and serotonin fluctuations levels that are going on in our brain because we're looking at things in our hand that called the iPhone or Android or whatever phone it is that your device it is that you're using. And that all sucks away and depletes things. And I was thinking yesterday morning, I'd had an early morning workout, and it was, it was 6:30. It was done with my workout, and it was 6:30. And I took 30 minutes. And I try to do this every morning, but truth is it happens about 2 to 3 mornings a week for me. I just sat and I just kind of cleared my head, and I just thought, and I breathed rhythms in a certain way. And I felt so good for that day. Like all the things that I was stressed about yesterday that I was going into were no longer stressed. Like I felt a sense of order to my day. And all of that is so true. But throughout the day, we need that some point in the middle of the day. And I think we need it more now than ever because we are so stimulated with all of the things that are going on in this world and in our lives. And, I think about it for our kids and the younger generations. I mean, they're from a young age, they're growing up with this stimuli all around them all the time. And I think it's dangerous.
Well, and it's all the more reason my 13-year-old, we are having her learn what self-governing and self-regulation looks like with her emotions, with her time, because they are challenged. Like you said, years ago, we had those rhythms established and we didn't have distractions.
That's right.
Right now, we're in an age of information way above transformation. We need to get back to, how do we get back to transformation and not so much information?
Yeah. Well, that's good. So is there a leader or perhaps someone that you feel is a great representation of the philosophies and teachings that you kind of impart into your clients? Is there somebody right now in, whether it's, in the US or globally, that's like, this person or these people, whether they're leaders or not, perhaps they are in their lives, but that represent well some of the things that you teach to your clients?
You're probably gonna chuckle at this, but my husband.
Oh, that's great.
My husband, he is a peacemaker. He is a gentle servant leader at home and with the people he leads on a daily basis. And I learn a lot from him. We as most married couples, we balance each other well in temperament and in parenting and all of those things. But just watching him lead others and how he leads us at home is inspiring to me.
That's phenomenal. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So books, are you reading any books right now? Anything that stands out that maybe that you could share with the audience, or whether it's a book you're reading right now or maybe a book that you've recently read that maybe the audience would benefit from?
Leadership-wise, I'm not reading anything right now, but...
It doesn't have to be leadership. It could be anything. It could be, something that's helped you, and even with your life coaching and things that maybe that you've shared with clients in some of your coaching that may be...
one of the best books I've ever read is Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. It is a story of resurrection and how we all have brokenness in our lives. The name of my business is Beauty for Broken, based on Isaiah 61, because God can take anything that's broken and make it beautiful. And in this story, he redeems the life of this young lady who is in dire straits and prostitution. And it's just a beautiful love story about how Christ comes around us and redeems our brokenness, no matter how broken. Yeah. And that inspires me to do what I do. I absolutely love to come alongside someone who feels like there's no hope and to give them hope, champion them that they can do this, whatever it is that this is for them, that is, so that's always been an inspiration. I read it years and years ago, and I think I've read it 3 more times since then. That's
great. Thank you for sharing. So on your website, I noticed this, this kind of statement or this thing or this concept called Resurrection Me. And I'd like to just unpack that a little bit. What is that? What does that mean? I think I know what it means, but share with the audience, what does Resurrection Me look like, and what does it mean to you, and tell us about that.
Resurrection, of course, is bringing something back to life. Yeah. And so many of us are walking around needing no doubt to be brought back to life in some area. And we put on great facade that we're doing fine. Matter of fact, that's our favorite statement is I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm doing good. Everything's good. But really, there's always something that needs resurrecting. And often as a life coach, that is what I'm doing, is helping people discover what is it that needs to be brought back to life, and helping navigate ways to do that, whether it be in your physical health, your emotional, how you address and attack every day. What does that look like for you, and bringing things back to life.
Yeah. I mean, it does, it goes back to, and as you teach, it starts with this person in the mirror, right? And bringing this person back to life so that we can then really thrive and flourish to bring and share others, the life that we have to give to others. I think Resurrection Me is a good name for a book. When are you going to do a book?
You and 100 other people have asked me that. The Lord's working. The Lord's working. So, right. And that would definitely be a title that resonates. So, resurrection, that's my own story.
Yeah.
I had physical issues that stemmed from emotional issues that were based in spiritual roots. So all of that means something to me and is part of my story. And so definitely want to share that with other people.
Knowing that you work daily to help people find their rhythms in their life, spirituality, mentally, emotionally, what are some things that you do, that Julie does yourself, to kind of create that balance and that rhythm? Maybe just share a few little, nuggets there.
Tips and tricks.
Yeah.
We're the worst leaders of ourselves,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And that is why I'm so passionate about leading ourselves. It's a personal struggle for any of us who are in leadership, who are raising children, or are in a lot of lanes. So it's definitely something I have to be intentional about myself. I think everybody needs a life coach. I have also had a life coach in my journey, and but I think just finding those rhythms of like sleep, going to bed. I'm a night owl. So definitely have to be purposeful about, okay, it's probably time I need to go to bed because I know I have to get up.
Yeah.
Having that Sabbath every day, and at least one day a week where I'm checked out. I don't do social media. I don't do anything except what is going to refuel me for that next week ahead. Just relationally, that is really the key to life. Relationships, I think, at the end of the day, when all is said and done, the relationships in our lives are what matters.
No doubt.
So I think that's a rhythm that's one of my core values. And so being intentional about connecting with someone, encouraging someone, telling someone how grateful I am for them.
No doubt.
That is an emotional rhythm that's important.
Yeah. I mean, not only do you not know how that's going to impact the person that you're sharing that with, but it impacts us equally, right?
Yeah,
it goes back
absolutely.
to what I talked about at the beginning of the episode, just having a perspective and a heart and a mindset of gratitude and being grateful for even the smallest things.
Well, and letting people know that. You might think it, but even taking that next step of intention and, that's, again, that word again, being intentional. Mm-hmm. Not reactive to the things around you, but proactive.
Look, I am super thankful for you. I'm thankful for what you're doing in the lives of so many people. I'm thankful that God has really put this on your heart and really lifted you up to go and share what you're doing and coach others. And I've truly enjoyed learning from you today. I know our audience has enjoyed learning from you. And I want to share with our audience to make sure to tune into our next episode, because we're going to have Julie back on. And for those of you that want to learn more about Julie and her mission to inspire others, please check out Beauty for Broken Life Coaching. What's the website?
There's beautyforbroken.com, which is my life coaching, and then Beauty for Broken Wellness, it centers more on the physical health piece. So
gotcha. So beautyforbroken.com, and then beautyforbrokenwellness.com.
Yep, either one.
So check those out if you would. Look, I can't wait to have you on the next episode.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait to unpack more things and talk to all of our subscribers and listeners out in podcast land. I'd like to say I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for this opportunity to talk to you, to speak with you, and to share the wisdom from our guests. And I hope today's episode was both empowering and inspirational. Until the next episode, I pray that our daily journeys are filled with opportunity to lift others up as we aim to go above and beyond. Thanks, everybody.
Our executive producer and host is Matt Maloney, President and CEO of FAM360. Strategic Communication Coordinator, Michelle Ducato. Production assistance by Tin Dog Studios. Director, John Berland. Creative Assistant, Whitney Berland. Theme song, Connecting Dots by Curtis Cole, provided by Artlist. Please subscribe today and don't miss any of our weekly episodes.